is no turning back because we are live on Facebook for the Not Your Average Investor show. Today, Tuesday edition, is our interview edition where we try to teach the audience something. And normally we have, as today, very compelling guests. And normally I do have my co-host Greg Cohen with us, but we have decided to upgrade that today with Melissa Gillespie, who, if you're a rental property investor, you may or may not know this, but you are essentially investing into a business. You have a cash flowing asset and you need to manage it. So whether you do it actively or passively, whoever is your property manager is the CEO of that business. And for JWB investors who choose to take a back seat, let somebody else take care of it, make money for them, Melissa Gillespie is that CEO. There's nobody better in the game. She manages an incredible amount of resources and information, and she is with us today. Welcome, Melissa.
Thanks. That's a very kind introduction. Probably a little nicer than maybe what's real, but I'll take it today.
Well, you know, well, TBD. We'll find out. We'll find out today.
Okay, sounds good.
So if you've been on the show before, you know that we love interaction, right? Like our show is driven by user questions, and we want to get your questions answered, and we want you to be a part of this. There's two ways to do that. The first one is you click that little chat button, and when that pops open, I need you to do one thing. Go to that blue box that says all panelists and change it to all panelists and attendees. That way, when you are chatting in there, not only do I see it, not only does Melissa see it, but your fellow attendees see it, and they can also help you, right? Because we're building this community out. We're all trying to help each other out. You might make a new friend, a friend named Lee Bishop for sure, and who is always active. Welcome, Lee. Welcome, Marilyn. Also, I see you back as well, and Bill Shields. And anyways, we have a great community here, folks. If this is your first time, you may fall behind on the inside jokes, but you just got to come back and you'll start catching up. And then if you want a question asked on the show for me or for Melissa, I highly recommend you ask Melissa questions, not so much me. You hit that Q&A box on the bottom right. That pops open, that one. And that is the best place for me to keep track of everything, right? Like we are live on Facebook. We've got this chat. We got this Q&A. I want to get every question answered, and I might go cross-eyed if it's in too many places. I do my best, but if you put it in a Q&A, I promise you that it will get my attention. And last but not least, if you are, interested in what the next step may be here, if you just want to know more about rental income investment, if you want JWB's free investor kit, where it gives you a spreadsheet to break down all your investments, and it's very interactive and it's really cool. I get to play with it on Thursdays. Go to jwbwebclass.com, sign up for that. Or listen, if you just miss Greg, right? If you're missing Greg's face, you can find it at jwbwebclass.com. So without further ado, this call is about the mistakes that people make in property management, how to maximize your ROI, how to minimize your maintenance costs, and how to do this as headache-free as possible with the best tenants you can. And you're going to be the star of the show today, Melissa. I hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right.
Bring it.
Well, let's start with give us your origin story, right? You weren't born the head of property management at JWB, right?
No, I was not. I found JWB in 2013. That's when I started here. So I'm coming up on 7 years. And originally, I was a stay-at-home mom prior to that. And so I really just wanted to get back to work and have something really important to me outside of the home. And so I found JWB just as anybody else would find a job on Indeed, and applied and took the job. And at that point, had no idea what that was going to lead to, what it would mean for my future, and all the knowledge I was going to gain from this role in this company. So it's been really wonderful. I think, one of our core values is if you're either growing or dying, right? And that has absolutely been the case for me here at JWB, where I look back at the last 7 years personally, professionally, and I have grown just exponentially, really, in so many different facets. Getting my real estate license, becoming the broker for our property management business, some really cool things that I never thought would be the case when I originally joined the team. So came up kind of through the ranks of property management, learned my way here. I didn't have experience coming into this originally. So I've learned a ton, and hopefully I can share some of that knowledge today with y'all.
Awesome. Awesome. It's really, this has nothing to do with the show, and it's just complete serendipitous luck. But today, I literally an hour ago posted on LinkedIn an observation that hit me that ties into your story. And it's that I have long observed that stay-at-home moms re-entering the workforce are the most undervalued asset to a business owner, right? Like I mentioned 4 different women that I was referring to specifically, but every time I hear the story of a stay-at-home mom re-entering the workforce, a year later, I hear the story of just somebody who's totally over-delivering, who has built up all these skills. They're dying to get back in the workforce and prove themselves, and are driven by time efficiency, organization, understanding pain points. So I just find that incredible. I don't know. I guess. Do you want to comment on that, or is that
I
too?
100% agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
I think it's just, you just learn a lot of different skill sets being a mother of 3 children and figuring out how to kind of coordinate chaos all day long. I'm doing that here just on a way larger scale. So I 100% agree.
Totally. And normally, and again, credit to JWB for being so good at hiring and building culture. But normally I see it, it's like they take a job with a nonprofit because those are the only people that give them a shot. And then they end up being the executive director a year and a half later, but you're on the same track, right? Running one of the biggest departments.
Yes.
So, all right. So tell me about that. Tell me about the property management department. And I already see great questions coming in. We're going to get to specific questions in a little bit. I want Melissa, if you can you just break down how many people work for you, how many properties you manage, and just kind of like the main roles that exist there to address
Yeah.
the main pain points.
Definitely. So property management really in our business is an umbrella with a few different teams under that umbrella. We keep things pretty, separated as far as teams go in order to allow people that true ownership and specialization in their role. So we have our leasing team. They're responsible for the front end where they're underwriting residents who are wanting to move into our rental homes. They're walking people through that process. My team is the property management team, which is 100% resident facing. So our role and responsibility is that once someone moves in to a home, we are their point of contact. So we're handling rent related questions, lease renewal related questions. We have a maintenance team that is within my team umbrella, but still even its own specialization where they are handling all incoming maintenance requests from residents. We manage 35, almost 3,600 homes all throughout Jacksonville. And we have a staff on my side of 18. So that's myself. I have 3 supervisors who are just rock stars. And then our team who really is responsible to carry out that day-to-day communication with our residents to lead to an amazing experience for them. And then of course, we are very interrelated with our portfolio management team, which is the team of people. If you're a client of ours and you're on here, you already know who your portfolio manager is. You talk to them all the time, and we're communicating back and forth with that team every day, all things, so that whatever's happening in the rental property with the resident is getting conveyed as quickly and transparently and proactively with the client as possible. So that's kind of our business in a nutshell, and my team in a nutshell, what we're responsible for.
Cool. And when we had our call last week to just kind of warm up for the show, you told me the story of how when you first started working there, the department kind of looked how it looks now. And then for a while, it went more into every property manager does everything, but now you've kind of broken out. You've gone back to, you've reached a certain critical capacity and you've had to respecialize your teams. Can you kind of talk us through the pluses and minuses? If anybody's out there doing their own property management, right? Like the pluses and minuses of having a one person do all versus breaking it down into like leasing and maintenance.
Yeah, definitely. So, there are a lot of benefits to having one person responsible for a lot of the property management activities, right? You're building a relationship with the resident. you're their point of contact. They know who to go to for what, when, and you're able to have the knowledge of everything happening with that property, with that person. And so when you kind of separate some responsibilities and roles, you could lose that piece, right? You could lose the long-term relationship component. And for us at JWB, that's a really important component, is the long-term relationship, because we're signing long-term leases. So you're signing a long-term lease with somebody, but they don't know who to talk to for what, and they don't know who their point of contact is. That's probably leading to a poor experience there. But I think for us and the size of our business now, we realized at the beginning of this year that what was serving us very well for a long time in that portfolio style of management, where one individual was responsible for the process, really start to finish with the resident, was that we've got 3,500 homes. You're stretching people very thin to give them, the time and effort and energy to be able to do all of those things, do them exceptionally well, because we have a very high standard here. We want to deliver exceptional service to our residents and to our clients. And so we were like, you know what, maybe there's something to kind of bringing that specialization back, where a person can truly focus, gain the knowledge, and get really good at one of the components, where then they really are delivering that exceptional service and giving the experience for all parties, really leading to a better experience for everybody. So we made that switch in January, and for the most part, it's played out real well. There've been some hiccups and challenges along the way that we're working through, but for the most part, I think it's given people a sense of ownership of their responsibilities, and really just knowing what to see through, how to get all of the things done that need to get done in any given day. So for us, scaling is important, and being able to be very efficient to be able to handle that volume. This has kind of allowed us to do that.
Awesome. And you hit on a word there that might be one of the words I most associate with JWB, which is longevity, right? Like, I think about the way you want to look at this asset class and the way that Greg describes it, and the longer the outlook, the more it makes sense for you. I think about your relationships with your clients and how nobody has ever left. I think about the way that you approach your relationship with your tenants as a much more longer term outlook than how I perceive the market to be.
Mm-hmm.
And within that is the idea that you only sign, is it 2-3 year leases? What's the lease requirement?
2 to 3 year leases.
Yeah. And can you kind of tell me the thinking behind not allowing people to sign a 1 year lease? I imagine that's got to make it easier for you, right? Or like if it's a 1 year lease versus, I'll shut up. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because as a property management company, you make money on certain, right? There's fees there for us to manage your property. There are fees associated with that. So honestly, as a business, it could make more sense for us to do 1 year leases, and we could earn a renewal fee every time we renew your resident every year. But that's not the way that we align ourselves with our clients. So for a lot of property management companies out there, they aren't going to do long-term leases because they're going to want to make money every year on that renewal. Or if someone moves out, then that company is earning a tenant placement fee when the new resident moves in. For us, it's way more important that our goals and our business success is aligned with the client's success. And so for us, we know that signing long-term leases avoids vacancy expenses, avoids a property turn, right? If we can keep a resident in a home, paying their rent, really happy with their experience for multiple years, then that return on investment that a client is going to experience is certainly going to meet or exceed their expectations. Whereas if we're moving somebody out every year, think about a property turn. I mean, for clients who have been through a property turn, think about a property turn every year happening, what that does to your returns, what vacancy does for your experience. I mean, our goal is to make money when you make money, and to align our interests with yours as the client to really meet the return expectations, right? Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I guess if you have a different end game for your property and you're wanting a different outcome, certainly there's some benefit there with single year leases. If you are somebody who knows you're going to want to sell it or is going to need to sell it quickly, soon, whatever, right? There's reasons why you might not do a long-term lease, but for our business and our business model, it makes the best sense to hit the return expectations for a client and to avoid the maintenance expenses. Really, I mean, that's the biggest, to me, when I look at it, that's the biggest kicker. If you have a rental property as an investment, the maintenance expense piece is going to make or break you. So we're trying to keep that home occupied and save on some of that turn expense.
So let's say I have a friend who's never had a property turn, asking for a friend here. What is, I hear what you're saying, and I'm assuming it has to do with ROI, but you also hit on something of just like quality of life, of having to deal with a property turn. What all goes into a property turn?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at getting a home rent ready again. So a person moves out and they could have left that house in pristine condition, which is our goal and our hope, or they may not have, right? Maybe they didn't live in that house the way we would have wanted them to, or the way that we would live in our own house. And so there's expenses associated with that. Our average property turn expense right now, I think, is about $2,000. So it's not an exorbitant amount on average, but certainly if you're not earning rental income during that time, and you know that your home after that property turn will go onto the rental market and maybe it's going to sit another month, right? Then you're looking at lost rent for 3 months plus the expense that you're covering. I mean, there's utility costs associated when a home is vacant. There's no resident paying your utilities. There's ongoing kind of maintenance for landscaping to make sure that we're not getting city violations. So there are all of these additional expenses you wouldn't even think of, but that when your home is vacant, nobody's covering those for you, right? And so the value of a resident is that they're absorbing a lot of those kind of ongoing costs. And of course, the goal is that they're not damaging the property to where maintenance is crazy for you during occupancy too. So I guess if that gives clarity, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Totally. So I'm hearing there's like a $2,000 inevitable, like some paint, some maybe, like a professional cleaning, whatever needs to get updated.
Yeah.
And then I'm also hearing lost rent, right? So that's $2,000 minus cash flow coming in. And I'm also hearing the other piece that's like, oh yeah, you got to disconnect utilities and reconnect utilities, or if nobody's in there, somebody's paying for some kind of power bill, which you need to keep the AC running because we're in Florida. So you're gonna have to pay for that.
Yeah.
And things of that sort, which I didn't maybe that third, I'll be honest, right? I only thought about like the $2,000. I didn't think about the lost rent, and then I definitely didn't think about the utility piece.
It's like the ancillary things that you wouldn't think about. And of course, we facilitate it for the client. So they only see the expense, but still, if you're not earning income, that can be a big burden for a client, especially ultimately if you don't have multiple properties and it's your only rental property, then one turn could be a big bummer. So for us, a long-term lease hedges that risk for a client and allows the peace of mind that we're going to place great residents and we're going to put a lot of effort into the front end of underwriting and making sure that this person is willing and able to pay their rent every single month. And then we're going to work really hard at that relationship so that they want to keep staying over and over and over again.
Love it. Someone you may know here in the comments, Joshua Gillespie, says also safety, protection from crime. A house rented is less likely to be broken into, which is another thing out of your pocket.
Sure.
That makes sense. Okay. So then talk to me. So then I hear 3-year lease that allows me to build up that $200 to $300 a month for 3 years before that happens. So that hedges already. And then also JWB recommends increasing your portfolio so that you're diversified and you have that cash flow going on.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that front end process. What is it that you do, right? Because now we're saying we stop it on the front end because we're guaranteeing it contractually, but you're also doing your work to get great tenants to reduce the ongoing maintenance costs as well, right?
Yes, exactly. So underwriting for anyone who has a rental property, for anyone who is going to manage that rental property themselves or is going to look for a property management partner to manage that property for them, underwriting is a huge component of this. Because if I am doing my due diligence on the front end of saying this person meets our income requirements, this person has a background check, we know that they don't have, violent felonies on their background, things like that, you're again hedging the risk for the client. It's not perfect science, but there's a lot of data that tells you if you have somebody who's income qualified, has a clean background, and doesn't have major open balances with other rental companies, you can feel pretty good about their willingness and ability to pay their rent in the future. So those are all kind of our buckets of criteria. And every property management company, or you yourself as an owner potentially, might have a different criteria within those buckets, but those would be buckets that would be really, really important to know. That I'm going to make sure I'm verifying income. I'm going to make sure that I'm verifying background, that I'm not allowing big open balances. And so the effort on the front end with our leasing team to vet people out and really take a good look at all of those different things prior to moving them in is even just more assurance that you're going to be protected from some of the greater risks like evictions, early move out, terminations, things like that.
Makes a lot of sense. So the buckets I'm hearing is, which you kind of hit up on, but just to make it clear, is income, past rental history, right? Like whatever you've done in past rental, and criminal background, right? Okay.
It.
So then income wise, what's the actual metric for income?
We look at 3 times the rent amount. So if a rent's $1,000, we're looking for monthly income of $3,000 or more as our criteria internally for JWB. That's pretty standard within the industry. Some property management companies might go a little bit less aggressive, maybe a little more, but 3 times the rent is pretty standard, I'd say, for industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, like, if I'm trying to contextualize it based on past conversations we've had around COVID, and you think, if somebody's on that safety net, which is the unemployment and whatever they're getting, and they're down to like 2/3 of their income, you now still have, by guaranteeing that it's only 1/3 of all of it, that means now if somebody really has to, go back to their bare resources, they have half of their income to pay rent, half of their income to pay food. That other third is,
Absolutely.
the Amazon guy, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. And that, again, makes it obvious why y'all are getting such ridiculous rental collection numbers, right? Like,
I think the underwriting on the front end has to have a lot to do with that, because I could say it's all my team's effort of calling and their relationships with people. And I think that it's that. I definitely think that we have done a wonderful job of kind of leading with compassion. I know Greg's talked a lot about that during this time as being something really important to us, and we've done a great job. But even leading with compassion, if you didn't move the right person in on the front end, there's only so much you can do to help and get money for rent, for, you know what I mean? So totally. And we're getting, I'm going to hit the third piece that we promise of the 3 cash flow killing mistakes. Already have got like really good questions. We got like 4 questions in the Q&A, but just letting everybody know, we're about to go past the interview period. And then now you're going to have Melissa's brain to ask whatever tactical property management question that you can, right? So I'm encouraging anybody that wants to get their questions answered. We're about to get to that. So we talked about the first 2, right? Leases that lead to bad ROI, excessive maintenance costs that bleed into your savings. And the third is poor tenant renewal rates. Can you talk to me about, and I feel like all of this leads into that, right? Yeah.
If you've been in your house for 3 years, you don't want to leave. If you're a well-qualified client, that's good. But are there any other strategies that increase your tenant renewal? And also, if you can talk about how important the renewal piece is to you.
Yeah, the renewal is, to me, our ability to renew already, we kind of looking back at what we've talked about, it saves you on the property turn, right? If I can renew the lease, then you don't have the vacancy. you don't have that turn expense. It also, to me, signifies the relationship we have with the resident. And if somebody wants to sign another 3-year term, I know that I have done a really incredible job of being there for them, supporting them, being a trusted resource for that resident through their first lease term. Another piece of this, though, is if I am signing a 3-year lease on the front end, and let's say market rent for that property is $1,000, and then I am raising the rent typically in the last year of the lease to try to keep up with market rent for you as the client, so that as your taxes change and things like that, you can still cover your mortgage and all of your expenses that come along with owning a property. If I renew them for another 3 years and I don't reevaluate that rent rate, that could be a problem for you, because 3 years later, who knows what the market has done at that point. And so it's our job to, at the time of renewal, also run rental comps. Someone on our team named Tara, you probably know Tara. She runs comps for us for all of our leases that are coming up for a renewal, in order to allow my team the visibility into decision-making about rent increases. And so you think about, if we're renewing someone for 3 years with a rent increase, then they probably, they really need to like us at that point. And so I think, again, it just goes to the importance of a relationship with your residents and working really hard to make sure that, you win when they win. And so if I'm raising the rent and they still want to stay, that indicates to me that I've done my job and I've done a really great job. So I think obviously reevaluating rent rate, super important when you're going to renew a lease. The long term saves you, again, with a great paying resident who's taking decent care of the property, saving you that expense component of vacancy. And then the relationship, that you can't really deny that if we're renewing 70% of our leases across thousands of homes, while still getting rent increases and all of those other kind of hurdles that we'd overcome, the resident experience has got to be a good one. And it's really, really important to the success overall.
Totally. I get that. And you did a really good job at answering the importance of renewals from you to your client. But how do you drive that long-term relationship with your tenant, right? You're a property. What are you, like, going out and cooking hot dogs for them, or like what? Can you tell me a little bit?
Yeah, we just nail it on the renewal incentives. We love to have a lot of fun with those. So we offer a renewal incentive to our residents, where if they renew within a certain time frame, we're offering them all kinds of different things. And I remember going back to, probably 2-3 years ago, we had a resident who had gotten a 7-day notice, which is basically a notice that you're in violation of your lease somehow and you need to fix it, for having a big above ground trampoline in their backyard. And that is in violation of a lot of homeowners insurance policies. And so we sent them a notice. We said, you have to take down the trampoline. And they were so upset, because that was where their children played, and that was why they wanted the yard, is so that they could have this trampoline. And so we were taking away their fun of their kids. And so we said, well, how can we get creative and offer them something fun to replace this trampoline? And so Adam Regal, our CFO at the time, he was my boss, and we were talking, and he's like, I bought my kids a bounce house for Christmas this past year. And you can buy them on Amazon. They're a couple $100s. Why don't we offer to buy them a bounce house? So we legitimately bought this family a bounce house, right? And they were so floored that we took their concern and we created a tangible solution that would actually meet what they wanted. And it was one of those moments for me that really a light bulb clicked for me about how we should approach this. This isn't just about throw money and hope that they take the $100 incentive and that'll make them stay. If you hear someone and you listen to what they need and you really work to try to think creatively about how you can meet that need, that's very valuable to someone. And that is what breeds a relationship. So we offer incentives. They're not always bounce houses. Typically they're more standard, but we also start reaching out well in advance. And I think that that's another component here where, you know, if somebody's required to give a 60-day notice, you'd think I'll just start calling them at, 65 days out. We start calling people 9 months ahead of time to check in. We do what's called a check-in call. And those are just, there is no other motivation but to say hello, ask people how they're doing. It gives us a great opportunity to either celebrate that things are going great, or if they have a concern, we've got 9 months to fix it, to turn around their perception and have their experience be a better one, so that when it does come time to renew, they're ready to do that. So those are kind of some of our tricks of the trade, I guess: creativity and reach out early.
Listen, that was awesome, right? Like I, as you know, I'm thinking of how I can repurpose this content afterwards. And I'm just like, mental note, at 26 minutes, Melissa tells amazing story of Balance House. So that was really cool. I appreciate that.
One of my favorites.
What am I not asking you right now? Right? Like we're about to go into very tactical questions. Is there anything else here that I'm missing that you think is crucial to what you're doing, or another great story you want to tell, anything like that?
I mean, I guess if I had to add anything to this, I would say, when you're buying a rental property for an investment, you're looking at the numbers. It's got to make sense by the numbers. There's all of these components that go into the purchase of a rental property. Mm-hmm. But once you own it, I think, to me, the greatest determination of your success or potential failure is your property management team. And so property management, I mean, I told you this when we talked last week, Pablo, it's a thankless job. It's not super glamorous. It's really hard a lot of the time. And I think what makes us great is the team that we have in place, and having people who show up every day and really care and want to make the client experience, client owner, client resident, client vendor, all of the community that we, touch in some way, shape, or form through our work. We really care and we really want to make it great. And so I think that's what you got to look for. You got to find a partner who's going to really care and give it their best effort and allow you to kind of reap the reward from it. So I guess, to me, that's the piece of this that we talk less about. We talk less about property management and kind of the nuts and bolts, but it's the deal breaker. I tell my team, the buck stops with us. If we don't perform, then everything that a client was set expectations for on the front end of purchasing doesn't get delivered. Like, we are the people who give the deliverable. And so I think that's how I look at it, as something very rewarding for me. And I try to really gain that buy-in from everybody on my team, because at the end of the day, if you don't have that in your head, this job can be hard. So that's all. I guess that's what I would add.
Amazing. I'm going to get a little bit selfish before we go to questions here, because we did talk about this, right? Like, management in general is a thankless job, right? It's like, when stuff doesn't go wrong, then you're doing a good job. If it goes wrong, then you're stressed out.
Yes.
How do you stay motivated? What's your mindset to approaching that? How do you motivate people in a thankless job of management, of caretaking, where it really is just like, it's all you can do is go down. But the days that you go up, like the day you got them a bounce house, I'm sure it was amazing, but that's few and far between of like a big win to celebrate. Otherwise, it's just like nothing went wrong, right?
Yeah.
How do you approach that, and how do you keep people motivated around you with that?
That's a great question. Some days it's harder to do that than others. I guess for me, I've actually been talking a lot with Adam Eisman, who's now my boss, and we've been talking about, like, what's your value proposition? Like, what fuels you? What makes you want to show up at work every single day? What is it that's keeping you driving forward? Because, as your role changes and things in the business change, you kind of have to redefine that over and over again, as, what you're impacting is different. And so for me, I think it's really that I am relentless in my standard of excellence. And I love seeing people rise to that and accomplish that and deliver the results that I know we can be really proud of. So I just celebrate wins, and I look at even the smallest wins as something really fun to say, way to go, And I think I just push hard. I push really hard for the standard of excellence. And so I think my team just knows that. And so do they. I don't know. My team works really, really hard. And we hold on to the glimpses like the bounce house. I have a folder in my email where I file away something for a rainy day, right? If I need a boost or a pick me up, I'll reflect on that and say, wait a second, not all is bad. There's a lot of good things happening. Let's think through, what am I thankful for? What am I proud of? What are we doing great? And just keep upholding the standard of excellence, I guess, is what motivates me, because I'm a goal-driven oriented person who, like, if I'm achieving, I'm feeling great about it. So
yeah. Note to self: hire stay-at-home mom college athletes.
there you go.
All right, got it. That was awesome. Amazing answer. Also another piece of content that I'm definitely cutting out. So, all right, we're gonna go into the tactical questions. You ready?
Yeah.
Lee Bishop asks, if we have a property that has the drain bill along with a taxes estimate, my question is, does this cut into the cash flow?
The drain bill? Is that like, do you mean utility? Does he mean utilities potentially?
I will allow Lee to chime in. Lee, just recontextualize in the chat. I'm going to move on to the next question, and we can, is that good?
Yeah.
All right, cool. We'll keep it on. So he wrote his own answer. You hire Melissa. That's how you do it. So yeah, Lee, please
Thanks,
let us
Lee.
know what you meant by the drain bill. I'm sure you will. Rob Jones asks, hey there, we have a $100,000 home that we bought through and is managed by JWB. We just got our home owner's insurance renewal policy. The insurance has gone up $200 from last year. Are you seeing this across the properties that JWB manages? What can we do? Please advise.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the best advice I could give you, if we manage your property and your insurance is through Ritchie Insurance, call their office and talk to them about potentially looking at whether or not it's a good idea to rewrite your policy. I mean, I think in Florida, it's sometimes common with us being a hurricane state, right? Where sometimes insurance carriers just don't necessarily want to continue writing policies. I remember when I was buying my home last year, and we have USAA as our insurance for everything else. So we went to them for homeowners insurance, and they don't want to write policies in Florida. So they just jack up the prices. So I think that's a component here of just being in Florida, the property being in Florida. I would certainly say reach out to Whitney, Ricky, or her team and get their expertise, because they are the ones who will be able to say, yes, it'd be a good idea to try to shop for a different insurance policy or carrier to get you a better deal.
That makes a lot of sense. Just quick question. Is that and obviously nobody in JWB will ever answer that, this is not my job, right? But like, is that you talk to your portfolio manager question? Are you talking to the property management department for that one?
Good question. I didn't define that very well. Your portfolio manager, who is as a client, your direct point of contact, would be a great person to connect you if needed with someone from Whitney's office. So if you aren't sure how to get a hold of them, your portfolio manager will 100% be able to get you in the right hands to get that handled for you.
Right. So it sounds like a good question to ask your portfolio manager then. All right, Rob, I hope you like that. So to recontextualize Lee's question, he says, along with the tax assessment came an estimate for storm drain replacement, but I got the bill for all 5 of my homes, and he's wondering if that cuts into cash flow.
Gotcha. I think absolutely it would, right? I look at that as a type of maintenance expense where if you're having to absorb costs in addition to taxes, insurance, if you're having to do work on a property based on the city dictating it, that would certainly be something that's going to impact you, because that's going to be an expense that's coming out of your pocket that you weren't necessarily aware of previous to. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think again, probably if these homes are managed by us, I think they are. I think I've met you, Lee. Then I would again share the information with your portfolio manager and see how we can help facilitate some of it and make sure we're doing what's best for you.
Got it. That makes sense. So as someone that isn't up on everything here, storm drain replacement sounds like a city thing, right? So the city is replacing a storm drain that is outside, from the meter down, right? Like
exactly.
Instead of the meter up.
Exactly. And sometimes there are expenses from the city associated. Sometimes there aren't, but that's something we could probably research for you and help you out with a little bit if we have the information.
Got it. All right, sweet. So Lee Bishop has another question. So we have a team and not just one individual. How are you creating a way to get to know our team? Is that Lee? I'm guessing you mean Lee has a team that deals with his service person, or again, I don't know. Do you understand that?
I mean, I guess ultimately for me, our team in this office, we want this to be seamless. So if you are the point of contact for your portfolio manager, or if you have a team of people who's your point of contact, either way, you really shouldn't feel any difference in your experience, because all these things happening behind the scenes, all of the renewal decisions being made and maintenance decisions, and all of this is happening behind the scenes. We're doing all that for you. And then your portfolio manager is that transparent voice who's sharing the nuts and bolts of it. So you basically are getting a team of, 80 people working on your behalf for your portfolio. I don't know if that answers your question or not, Lee, but that's what I'm going with.
All right. Sounds good. Marilyn Cotterman from Homosassa, Florida asks, does Melissa's team handle the eviction process as well as onboarding a tenant?
Yes, we handle the eviction process. So we work in partnership with some attorneys. We don't actually go down to the courthouse and file them, but we do file the evictions on our residents should they not pay. Obviously, we have lots of different standards in place to work with people to the point and then say, hey, this is kind of where the buck stops and we're going to have to make that decision. My team specifically does not place the residents on the front end. That's our leasing team. We're very interrelated. So I know a lot about it just because obviously I've been around a long time and understand our business, but we have a separate team of people. The leasing agents really are skilled in, it's more of a sales role, right? I look at leasing and property management as sales and service. We're all working toward the same end goal, but they're skilled in those conversations on the front end with a prospective tenant, where I'm skilled in the carrying out of exceptional service on the back end. So both are critical to your investment, but we are a separate team. I don't like saying that because I feel like we really are all one team, but yes.
But yeah, you're a compartmentalized team.
Yes.
Same team,
there you go.
compartmentalized, right? You got offense and defense in football, right?
There you go.
Yeah, right. Cool. And then Lee Bishop was just clearing up that JWB has a team, right? That he's saying that it is a diversified team is what he's saying.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Mike Foster asks, I know there are currently restrictions on evictions, but when you have to do so, what is the general eviction process in Jacksonville? And do you have a means of limiting the damage an evicted renter might inflict on the property before their departure?
Great question. So COVID times are very different than normal times right now when it comes to non-payment of rent and evictions. But the typical process is, for us, rent is considered late for our business by the 4th of the month. So after midnight on the 3rd, rent is late. We send a 3-day notice. That's a requirement by Florida law, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty standard anywhere you're at, that you have to initiate a 3-day notice prior to just filing eviction or kicking someone out of their house. And that letter basically states what the balance is and when it's due by. And if they don't pay it by that date, then you proceed with a formal eviction being filed with the court. So for us, we send those out. We allow that person to hopefully communicate with us and enter into a payment arrangement with us if we can swing one. If not, then we would file eviction. Typically we file mid-month. So we give people a couple week, runway to get themselves in a plan. And then from there, once we file eviction, I think this is something that is a misconception by a lot of people who own rental properties is, the eviction's just the end. You try to kick them out as soon as possible once you have to file, but that's not really the approach we take. Largely because we are very motivated to keep your property occupied, again, avoiding the vacancy expenses. And so we enter what's called a stipulation with residents a lot, where we say, hey, if you'll communicate with us and if you will sign an agreement and enter a formal arrangement, we are going to continue to work with you to pay off your balance. What this does is, number one, it keeps them in their home. So residents are highly motivated for it. But two, it really I mean, it's in the best interest of the client in most cases because you're recouping all of the lost rent, eviction fees, all the things associated. You're getting paid back, so you're not losing out, and you're keeping your residents. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. So that's our main approach when we are filing an eviction, is to truly not have that be the end of the road. If we can get the, it's a two-way street. Communication goes both ways. So if we can get that communication from our residents, we're going to go ahead and do that. So that's normal life. COVID's different, but.
Yeah. Well, that actually sounds, that's brilliant, right? Like it is, to see filing in as an eviction as more of a nudge than an atomic bomb when you don't have to pull the atomic bomb, right? Like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Marilyn Cotterman asks, is the tenant responsible for lawn care?
Yes, ma'am. They sure are.
All right. Some questions are
Almost
easy.
always. There are some properties where there's weird things, but I'd say the 99% rule is probably in play here, where yes, they are required to do their own landscaping.
I gotcha. Mark Bronson asks, by the way, Lee, I'm thinking the same thing. Lee just put in the comments, Melissa is really doing a great job. And I was like, yeah, dude, like I'm watching this. I'm like, this is so good. But anyways, yeah. Good job. And I'm seeing some comments come in on the chat. I've got you. Yeah, I got you, right? I got you, Guillermo. I got you, Norma. I'm trying to like go with the timestamps of when the questions came out on Q&A, and also, stay true to who had it in first. So we'll get to the questions in the chat in a second. Mark Bronson asks, how do you underwrite tenants that come with no job, but more than enough cash and savings to meet the 3X for the term of the lease?
Really good, tough question. I'd say if I have to answer this, it doesn't happen a whole lot. We have had in the past people front the entire duration of their lease and rent. We have situations where we're charging additional deposits. Typically though, if there is no kind of consistent reoccurring income, that'd be a challenge we'd be overcoming for sure. So we'd be asking something way outside of our normal to that person in order to be able to move forward. Again, it's one of those outlier weird things that maybe I could count 2-3 times where that's happened, where we've said, hey, maybe we should look at doing something a little differently here. But I mean, in 7 years, 3,500 homes, 2 or 3 times, not something we have a streamlined process for. We typically would evaluate that pretty carefully, I'd say.
I have to assume that based on the model that JWB pursues, right, the C+ neighborhood, working class neighborhood, and who a person without income but the cash to cover 3 times rent, right? Like that to me sounds like an entrepreneur that doesn't have W-2, it doesn't seem like the same person. Like,
yeah, like I said, it's not.
Yeah,
it's very atypical to see a situation like that. Again, we come across it, but it's not something we deal with super consistently.
That makes sense. All right. Mark Bronson asks, what are over the top owner requests or expectations? I don't know if you want to. Do you want to answer? Nah, that's
over the top owner request. Our owners are all pretty, like they're pretty accommodating, respectful. I mean, I don't know. I don't really think there's much there. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. You're also really good at proactively communicating expectations, right? So I feel like probably handle that on the front end, like the lease thing. Yeah. Awesome. All right. I'm going back to, Guillermo Montes asks, what is the average rent increase after 2 to 3 years of tenancy?
Great question. I mean, again, it's really dependent on the market. Typically we're going to see, I don't know, maybe 3-4% increase, which is kind of a lot. Depending on the market, if you are in a market that is seeing insane appreciation, then that rent increase is obviously going to follow suit, where we're going to capture as much of that as we can. The way we do it is we look at the market rent increase, and if it is under a certain threshold, we have autonomy to play with what that rent increase is. So if the difference between what market rent is and current rent is less than $50, we're going to, on the property management side, make that decision completely autonomously to say, hey, you know what, we'll do $25 increase in year 2. If it is getting to be where the difference is $100, $200, then it is our responsibility at that point to capture that increase or say, well, at some point it is maybe in the best interest for someone to vacate. So I guess if that answers the question, it's really more determinant on market rent at the time and moment that you're renewing that lease, right?
Yeah. So you have a process. In general, it's this, but it is individual to property and market conditions and whatever. I think that's a great answer. Guillermo Montes asked again. We got like 3 from Guillermo, by the way. So I'm going to switch my Hispanic and my American accent back and forth here. Yeah, so Guillermo asks, did you have a number of evictions due to long-term lack of payments of rents?
In regards to COVID specifically, the orders have just, they've changed a little bit. Up until last month, the orders for eviction for both Florida and federally were that you could not file on people for non-payment of rent, or at least wouldn't see them through. And so last month was the first month that we submitted new eviction filings. Yeah, it was extended last night until October 1st. But it does have specific language in the order from August 1st to now where it says that as long as the financial hardship is not directly related to COVID, loss of income from the virus, that you can still file. So we did file a handful of evictions. Obviously, they can't be federally backed. There's all kinds of different components that go into that for us to make the decision confidently that we should be filing on somebody. We filed a handful in August. We're going to continue to follow suit with that unless something changes. So not too many. I mean, we're collecting 97% of rent. We're trying to go about this again very compassionately, yet serving the client the very best we can, because the longer this goes on, the pain point just gets higher, right? It just gets worse every moment. And so we're trying to be really mindful of owners, residents, all parties, how it impacts them.
That's awesome. Okay, great. Guillermo's got one more question. Do you require first, last, and 1 month security deposit when they start the lease? So I guess what are your requirements when you start the lease?
So they pay their full security deposit prior to move-in, and they're paying their first full month of rent up front. We do not require first and last in deposit. So it's just the deposit, first full month of rent, and any other fees associated. So if they have a pet fee, things like that prior to move-in. That's what gets them the ability to sign a lease with us.
Very cool. Norma Haptonstall has a question. We are going to purchase another property soon, but I notice many have HOA fees. Doesn't HOA fees eat your profit? I mean, I don't know if this is a property management question, but feel free to answer however you want.
I mean, I think that there's pros and cons to a property that has an HOA, right? So you may see some benefits from having a property that is in an HOA or has an HOA. I mean, yes, it is an additional expense to you as the owner. So I guess if you look at it that way, then yes, I guess. I think that there's benefits too that may outweigh it depending on the circumstance. So
yeah, and Norma, I would encourage you to join us on Thursdays where we do the property breakdown, right? We have a call like this on Thursdays and we go over properties, and I'm going to give you my amateur opinion just because I have been now a part of a lot of these property breakdowns. And the technical answer to your question is yes, that comes away from your cash flow. The holistic answer to your question is that JWB finds properties where the HOA fee is all built in and it's still the same ROI parameters that they look for, right? So you're not, when you as a client are going to JWB, I believe that you're not really as concerned about an HOA here and an HOA there. You're just looking at, oh, this is my ROI, this is my cash flow, and they're going to present you with opportunities that fit under the parameters of the wheelhouse they play in, which right now is like 10 to 12% cash on cash ROI without even including the appreciation. But 2 things. 1, join us on Thursdays. That's an awesome question for Greg. And 2, join us in our Facebook group. Go to JWB. I'm going to put this here in the chat, jwbfacebookgroup.com. And we have all of our past episodes in there. Greg goes live in there Monday through Friday. You're going to see a lot of these property breakdowns. You can also search JWB on YouTube and you'll see any past property breakdown that we've done. So lots to be there, but that's a kind of like a lot of information, but you know, I hope I answered okay.
Yeah, I think you did great, Pablo. Nailed it.
Thank you. All right. So Mike Foster asks, do you have any renters who smuggle in additional residents or Mike, you're into this like drama, man. Mike, do you have any renters who smuggle in additional residents or pets without prior approval? All right, give us a story. Give us a naughty renter story, Melissa.
Oh gosh, I don't like that. I guess, yes, certainly that has happened in the past. Recently, this is one it's not funny. It's hard for me to say what's a funny story because this to me is not funny.
Yeah.
I'm a rule follower, so I feel like you should follow the rules. But we had a resident who said they'd moved out, so we went to take possession, and there was someone there. There was a person there, and they were like, well, the resident let us stay here. And so we called the resident back and we're like, what is going on? Sure enough, she's like, oh yeah, I let her move in, a month ago. So that leads to a lot of problems. Not a good situation whatsoever. It doesn't happen super often, but when it does, it is not a good one because there's all things legal involved there where you have to go through a different process in order to get somebody out. And it's just not fun. So yes, it does happen from time to time. We do our very best to mitigate that risk. I don't know. I feel real bad.
Listen, Melissa, I think that there's one part of you that's thinking, man, I should never let this happen. There's another part of you that is underestimating how little fun you're having and how much you're shielding the owner of the property from everything that you have to go through when something goes wrong, right? So there is great value in you sharing these like big time pain points that ruin your week or month or whatever, because
I'm taking on that burden for you.
You're
welcome. Yeah. You're so welcome, y'all.
Yeah. So again, in the thankless job thing, right? Like you can think of yourself like, well, at least it was me that had to carry this cross. Right?
There you go. I'll take that, Pablo. That just makes it sound so much nicer.
Right. Listen, this is an amazing call we've had. Like I cannot underestimate how awesome you were on this call, like how much I enjoyed this, how seamlessly it flowed, and how useful I think all this was, right? Like I'm going to shoot Greg a text right after this and be like, good news, bad news. Melissa crushed it is the good news. Bad news is you're not needed back here. So
I don't know about that. I don't know about that, but I do appreciate it. This was a ton of fun. I love, it's outside of my normal routine. I love it, getting to talk and answer questions and laugh some. It's great.
You got a future in media when you dominate the whole property management game. I think you have a future in media.
All right, we'll see.
And I want to thank everybody that joined us. Right, we still have 36 people with us. I do want to say that if next step here, right, if you are missing Greg's face or you actually just want to know about the market of rental income property investing, the things that JWB does outside of property management, how to evaluate a market, how to evaluate a property, everything that you need to know, right? Like soup to nuts, go to jwbwebclass.com. I'm actually going to put it here in the chat. I forgot to do that. Webclass.com. Go there. You get the free investor toolkit. That's an awesome, you get 3 properties to evaluate. It is a good use of your time. And, everybody else, hope to see you in the Facebook group, jwbfacebookgroup.com. That's our cool club that we like to all hang out in. And I hope to see you on Thursdays. Thursdays is another, it actually feels kind of like this. It's a couple of people hanging out, answering good questions, going over like very practical advice. And it has another feel in the chat as well, because it's all regulars that we all kind of know each other. So you get to be in on the inside jokes. And Melissa, I hope that we get you back, right? Like this was amazing. Like, thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you have 3,500 properties to care for and a big team that you manage, and to get to spend an hour picking your brain was valuable for me, who doesn't own a rental income property. So I have to imagine it was very valuable for the audience, and you did awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm grateful for it. I'm glad to be here with y'all. So thanks, Pablo. Appreciate it.
All right. See you all on Thursday. Take care.